Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Norwich Talk for our 34th Norwich Talk podcast. I'm joined by Mr. Connor Southwell. Connor, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. It's nice to have you back fairly soon after the first time we had you on the review. By the time this video is out, the entire review will be out. So if you can go check that out, we'll be very, very grateful. If you don't want to watch it, it's probably fair enough because it's us talking about a fairly disastrous campaign for Norwich City. However, in today's podcast, we're going to have a bit of a chat with Connor about his journey into sort of sports journalism, which is it's just mental, isn't it? Now, for a bit of context, I think it's important to stress we are friends, Connor, aren't we? Would you call me a friend?
I don't know if you quite worked yourself into that category yet. You're someone that I have an association with. I've tried to distance myself from, but you're sort of like a bad rash. Okay. You've lingered. But yeah, who knows? One day, maybe you'll do a Max Aarons, and one day you'll develop into being someone that I call a friend. But yeah, I've known you for a while, haven't I?
You have. I really didn't expect to go that deep. It's going to take a lot of strength to carry this on now. But yeah, as I said, we're going to have a bit of a chat about your journey because you are a sports journalist now. You are a Norwich City reporter for the EDP Pink and Evening News. Have I missed anything? Is that it?
Eastern Daily Press. I don't think you said that.
Oh, yeah, well, Eastern Daily Press as well. So many titles this kid has now. But you sort of went the unorthodox method, didn't you? You took the unorthodox method in that you haven't got a degree in it, which is unbelievable. And you're also, how old are you at the moment? 20?
Oh, sure. That's poor from you, isn't it?
See, I don't know if you're 19. It's just the fact that I'm like a child compared to everyone else.
Yeah. 20. I turned 20 in February. So when I started, I was 19. Yeah.
Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it? And it's admirable. And watching you sort of go through the ranks has been quite fun. Because I remember, and we'll get onto this in a minute, but it all started in sixth form, just chatting about Norwich City. And I remember you just sort of pestering us to read your blogs. But we'll get onto that in a minute. We're going to start with your sort of relationship with Norwich City. Where did that blossom? When did you actually begin to support Norwich City?
Well, I was 6. For my first, I cut it into 2 categories. So the first game I consciously remember and the first game I actually attended. So yeah, the first game I consciously remember was when I was 6. I must have been around 2006, 2007. Norwich lost 2-0 to Sheffield Wednesday. I think it was the Peter Grant era. It was a pretty dark day, and I essentially remember it because I sat pretty close to the Sheffield Wednesday fans, and I remember them being on top form. My first game in general, I don't quite know. I know there was a friendly against Inter Milan that I went to, and also I think against Ajax that I went to as well. But you're pushing my memory a little bit. But it's been in my family for generations, essentially. My great granddad used to change the scoreboards at the River End when they were sort of manual scoreboards. My granddad at the moment used to be Captain Canary. That's a fun little side fact.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of always been there in my family, and I guess I didn't really have a lot of choice. My dad supports Norwich, my sister supports Norwich, my grandparents, etc. So I guess I didn't really have a choice. Is sort of part of your question, but equally it's something that I've had really since a very young age. But I've always loved football even before that. I think if you spoke to my mum, she would tell you that from the age of probably basically since I could walk, I've been kicking a football around. So that love's always been there. It probably just took a little bit longer to blossom because my dad wasn't a season ticket holder at that time. He had a family to sort of prioritise, I guess, and it wasn't until I was 9 that I got a season ticket with my sister in the River End, and had it until actually earlier this season to before I got the job that I got. So it's been quite a short love affair. I've seen a lot. It's been quite intense at times, but I've really enjoyed every second of it. It's such a unique club to follow, isn't it? I think, and to now report on. So that probably covers, I think, all bases in terms of your question. But it's been there for a while.
It is mental, isn't it? Because much like yourself, I mean, it's obvious because we're the same age, but in such a short span of time, we've almost seen it all at Norwich City. Hopefully we'll one day see a bit of European glory, but for now we sort of bask in reminiscing of the past days that we'll never get to witness in the flesh, but hopefully we do. But it is honestly mental. You mentioned playing football there. That is where we met, wasn't it? I think it was for Lakeford. I think we played together for one season. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember when we started high school seeing it and thinking, that's the geezer from Lakeford. And I think the situation was you left the club that I then went and joined, which I sort of, maybe that says something about the way we were going. I think we played for, did I say Lakeford? Was it Lakeford we played for?
You're pushing my memory. I know we overlapped at one point. I think actually we probably trained together a few times, but I think you left as I joined or something along those lines. But I was familiar with your work. I'll put it that way.
Familiar with my work. Oh God, I honestly do remember. I think the manager was an Ipswich fan as well, which was utterly bizarre, wasn't it? But I think that's enough for the origin of your relationship with Norwich City. Mine's pretty much the same as well, which is, as I said, I just find it bizarre in the fact that we've seen so much, and we're not even 21 yet, and we've just seen Norwich City go up and down, and that'll probably be how it is, for the foreseeable future with Norwich City. But we'll move on to the beginning of your journey towards actually becoming a professional writer and journalist, whatever you want to call yourself. But where did the writing start? Because it started with writing, didn't it? The video came a bit later on. I think that came at the beginning of 2019, didn't it? And we'll get onto that because your first video was just mental, isn't it? But where did the writing start? When did the desire to write begin?
Again, it's kind of different to perhaps the conventional route in the sense that it wasn't necessarily something I'd planned to do. I was kind of sat around at 15, 16, might have even been later than that, sort of wondering what to do with myself and where I wanted to go. I knew that I really liked football, and beyond that, I mean, I'm not particularly great at maths or science or anything else like that.
I know that very well. I know that better than anyone.
I knew that I liked English, I liked writing, and I liked football. And obviously at that point, I knew I knew a long time ago before that, but I knew I wasn't good enough to be a professional footballer. So, plus as a complete side note, which again we don't need to go into, but in terms of playing football, I'd kind of reached a point where I was kind of I've fallen out of love with it a little bit in terms of 11-a-side. I think I got to a level that I was fairly happy with in terms of playing, and I'd kind of done with that. So for me, it was kind of either I started coaching or I started doing something else. And my mum will always my parents will tell you that I've kind of got the look at me gene where I want to perform to people. I did drama as well, so that's probably a part of it. But I quite like sort of this element of it, camera side and stuff like that. So it really started with that, and it was kind of a fluke. I had a lot of opinions, thoughts that I was kind of venting at my sister on the coach home from away games, and I think it reached a point where I kind of realised that she actually wasn't listening and nobody really cared. So I thought instead of venting them into the abyss, so to speak, I'd actually put them on paper and try and use that as sort of a cathartic way of doing it. But mainly it was to try and improve and get better and actually see if I was any good at it, essentially. So it was a little bit of a fluke, to be honest, and it was something that was quite experimental on my part. But I think, and again, those early days were quite difficult in terms of my relationship with it, and I'm sure we'll go into that. But it was something that I really enjoyed and something that I really grew to love. So that really was how it started, kind of accidentally, I guess, if you want to put it like that. But it's by far, and I didn't tell anyone I was going to do it, by the way. I didn't tell anyone that I didn't even tell my family I was going to start a blog. It was kind of like, here's something that I've done. So I was quite nervous about it at the time. But it wasn't planned. It was just kind of something that happened, and I thought, oh, that'd be quite a good idea. And it's not turned out too badly. So it's probably one of the best things I've done, actually, starting that blog, as bad as it was looking back now.
Well, you got to start somewhere. Everyone has to start somewhere. Now, cast your mind back to, this must have been the days of sixth form. So what's this, 2016, late 2016, early 2017?
First year, yeah.
First year, as you say. And there you come into a lesson, you tell us, guys, I've written a blog, you ping us a link after school, we give it a little read, and for as much as I love reading, it was brilliant to me, but to you it probably was at the time, and looking back on it, it wasn't so good, and obviously you've progressed loads. But what was the vision at the time? Was there a vision, or was it literally just practice and practice?
Not really. There wasn't a goal with it that I wanted to take it anywhere. It was just I had a lot of opinion. Oh, I had a lot of thoughts. Opinions is probably a bit strong, but
you had a lot of opinions, mate. I know. Don't worry.
I had my thoughts on, because Norwich City at the time weren't in a particularly good place. So I kind of had some thoughts and opinions on that I felt sort of differed to some on social media that I read, and that was initially sort of the purpose behind it, was just to kind of express a view different to that of which people were saying, I guess. And that was kind of how it started. The first thing I said is they were so long; they were like essay long, and I kind of wrote them. And this is kind of before I got into the this is how you structure an article. It was like writing an English essay essentially, which was kind of what it was. So it was very unrefined, very raw, but it was a start, as you say, and I kind of look back on now and I sort of laugh a little bit to myself, but I think you're right. It just shows to me how much perhaps hard work I've put in to get to this point, because I'd still say now that I'm probably not the most talented or articulate writer in the world, but I just had a lot of hard work, and once I got to a stage where I knew it was something I wanted to do, that was it. Then that was sort of, I got tunnel vision towards it, and I didn't really have I didn't really have a plan B. So it was more a case of, right, how do I get there, rather than if I would get there, and that's kind of the attitude I took to it. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was something that was immediate, that, oh, I've started writing a blog, now I want to become a sports writer. It wasn't that at all. It was kind of a bit of a progression from that. At first, it was just, I was a very loud teenager with some views on football that I probably had no right to have, but there you go.
I mean, you chose a hell of a season to start writing, didn't you? I think it was Alex Neil's demise in the Championship, wasn't it? The 16-17, where things just went terribly for Norwich. And I suppose writing about that is always going to be interesting. I think the good thing about Norwich fans is that they'll always engage, no matter what the result is. Usually, when there's a positive result, you expect more engagement. When there's not, you expect less. And that is sort of the case. But at the same time, Norwich fans will read anything that you put in front of them and watch anything you put in front of them, which is such a good thing. I want you to tell me a bit about MyFootballWriter, because for me as well, of course, but more for you, MyFootballWriter has sort of elevated your career massively. That was the beginning, wasn't it? That was sort of your first platform. Gary Gowers gave you that. I think Rick Waghorn as well, Stuart Webber, the guys there. We're still in tandems with. We are the official YouTube channel of MyFootballWriter, of course. But how did that come about, and what was it? What did it mean to you at the time?
It meant a lot. It was one of those websites that I read a lot of, and that I valued the people who wrote on it, and it to me it was also about like the comments that people got as well. It was articles that people engaged with, and to me that was quite a big thing, going from, again, a sort of singular blog to like a site with a reputation and with people who read it with a loyal support base, I guess. And it kind of started because, and I guess this is kind of Norwich City's, if you want to sort of link it romantically to football, this is kind of what Norwich City have done in recent years, in the terms of I was sort of starry-eyed, young, definitely unrefined, but I was passionate about it, and I just wanted to write. And I sent a message to Gary one day on Twitter. I don't know when it was. I could probably find it somewhere, but I'd have to scroll back a long way. Essentially, just asking if I could write something. And I think I remember it was a little while before he replied and came back and said, yeah, and it was, and that was the start of it. I think in the end, I clocked before I checked before I started my job, but I think I wrote 101 articles for them in the end, or something along those lines. I'm pretty gutted I didn't go out with 100. That I think will always annoy the OCD part of me. But I can't really explain what that platform and what that website and what Gary did and Rick did for me. Really, they progressed me so much. Not just in terms of giving me a platform and giving me a voice, but equally in terms of my writing style and allowing me to experiment a little bit in terms of how I wrote articles and whatnot. And if anyone ever, and I've had a few since I've taken this job, obviously, comes to me with advice in terms of, I want to get into this. How do I get into this? My advice is always go and speak to Gary. That tends to be the way. And it's such a brilliant website. And I think it's more important than ever that you have this sort of fan media element to football clubs. And Norwich City really embraced that with us and with the guys at Talk Norwich City and Along Come Norwich and whatnot last season in the Championship. And they're such an important part of it now, because I think more than ever, and with social media, fans do have an increasing voice. And I think we're seeing it right now in terms of their importance to football clubs generally. And that was one of the most high profile fan medias. And Along Come Norwich, I don't think existed at that point. So it was really MyFootballWriter and Talk Norwich City. Talk Norwich City was very video based. So that was really the only website you could go if you wanted to write. And I wanted to write. And as I said, I had views on a lot of things. And it was a good way to refine my writing skills on a website that was very reputable and had a very good sort of network of people. Mick Dennis, for example, who's a highly qualified, highly skilled, who was a national journalist before he retired at newspapers as well. So it opened a lot of doors, actually, and it was a really good experience to learn there. And it improved me no end as a writer, I'll tell you that. But yeah, I can't describe how much Gary, Rick, and that website did for me as a person, and how much they've helped my career.
I want to mention Talk Norwich City because it's difficult not to, because they were also a big part of your sort of progression, weren't they? Another fan channel, of course, another piece of fan media from Norwich City perspective. What was the situation with Chris and Jack then? Because I think you started writing, you did a few podcasts. What was it like working with them guys?
Yeah, they're good guys, very professional, very good at what they do, obviously. And yeah, I went in initially to sort of head up their website, which was kind of something a little bit different to MyFootballWriter, where I was sort of contributing. Now I had to sort of establish like a writing team, I guess, and to sort of work on actually the structure of putting articles on a website. So again, it was something completely different. It's actually probably served me quite well in the job I do now, in terms of actually putting articles up and sort of self-editing them and stuff like that. It was really useful sort of experience in that regard. And I kind of wanted to do it a little bit differently. I got quite a young writing team. I think people who hadn't written before. I kind of wanted to do what had been given to me in terms of opportunities and stuff. So that was quite nice. And then, yeah, I sort of harassed them in the same way that I harassed Gary to try and give me a go on video. As I said at the start, you know, I was a drama student, so I kind of, you know, put me in front of people. That's kind of my approach to it. And it was the same. And I remember doing, I think it was the fan cams first, and then eventually it was a podcast, and it sort of spiraled from there. But again, that was just a really good experience in terms of being on camera and being on camera with people who are very comfortable, and the lessons that you can learn from that. So again, yeah, an extremely positive experience for myself, and again, more valuable lessons that I think have sort of stood me in good stead as I took the job I have currently, and also at the time was kind of something a little bit different to what I did. So yeah, it was very valuable.
At this point, we're deep into sixth form. You know, A levels are not to be taken lightly. We know that, don't we? And you know, they're very, very difficult, and they consume a lot of your life. But at the same time, you said you had tunnel vision, and this idea of you'd set your target and you were going for it. What was the balance like? Because there is sort of that debate. I say debate, I don't know what you want to call it. There's that sort of slight worry that you can't focus on one thing or the other, especially given your scenario, you know, at our age specifically, you know, say at university, it's the same for that, or if you're working a job, providing for a family, whatever. What was the balance like? How difficult was it? Was there a time where you sort of doubted the football writing? What was it like?
I didn't really have a balance, to be honest. You'll probably accept, you know, I didn't have much of a social life, if any. You know, it was kind of I remember my structure for the day really at A level was I'd get up at 7 o'clock. I'd be at school at 8 and be there until however in the day, 4 o'clock possibly. Get home, do all the stuff I need to do, whether that essay, homework, reading, whatever, and then it would be writing an article, and I'd do that 5 days a week for however long, 2 years maybe. So yeah, it was tiring, but again, there was just it was just this determination, I guess, within myself to do it, and because I sort of told myself at the time, rightly or wrongly, if you don't do it, someone else will be willing to do it. And with the industry that this is, it's so difficult to make a name for yourself, and it's so easy to ruin it so quickly as well. So for me, I was relentless in it, absolutely relentless. And that probably meant that at times I got the balance a bit wrong, and I probably did too much of one thing and not enough of the other, and vice versa. And I kind of tried to limit that. I think by the time the exams came, I kind of tried to aim for an article sort of every one a week, I think. So I slowed down a little bit. But in terms of balance, I probably not the right person to ask, because I don't think I struck a particularly good one. And sort of looking back, I think it probably didn't affect me mentally in the best way, but ultimately I don't regret it, because I think when you work so hard, you never, someone told, I can't remember who it was who told me, but you never regret it if you work too hard. You always regret it if you don't work too much. And that was kind of something I took. And it all sort of stemmed from I think it was year 10. I had a bad exam result. I don't know what happened, or whether I didn't revise enough or whatever. And I remember my dad really sort of sticking the boot in, and he was entitled to do it. He was completely right to do it. And it just gave me a foot where I needed a foot to be placed at that certain time. And from there, really, I was relentless in terms of my work in education, and also sort of the stuff with football as well. And I guess the balance came from trying to balance how hard I worked in both of them. I wanted to work as hard as humanly possible in both aspects. And sitting here today, I'm pleased with what I did in terms of my grades, and also in terms of what I achieved with football writing. So I kind of feel like that's justified, but I certainly don't recommend working in the same way I did. I would say it's probably better to be productive than relentless in the way I was, because I probably didn't get too much sleep in that period.
Well, to be fair, I can certainly vouch for it, and the idea of working hard, because I was sort of right there next to you as you did it, and you were always the person in a lesson that I would turn to for the answer. And for me, sitting here thinking about it now, it is mental how much you had going on. It is admirable in a way as well. Talk to me about what else you were doing, because I think you were involved with the fan social club as well. What else were you doing? Other stuff at the time. What else were you doing?
I did volunteering thing outside of football, which was the Young Norfolk Arts Festival, I think, which was again the same thing. It was communications, mainly sort of writing and video and stuff, and really enjoyed that. So I was doing a lot of things volunteer. I work experience.
You did the BBC thing as well with Will, didn't
BBC
you?
Voices for a little bit. Yeah, I did the Young Reporter scheme at the BBC, which again was a great avenue that really helped me progress.
Tell me about that experience specifically, because it was a massive one, wasn't it? Because for a bit of context, our friend at school, Will Minnes, I think he broke his neck. It was horrendous, and he's made a brilliant recovery. It's a miracle what he's done, really. And we'll leave a link in the description to watch that. I'm sure you can watch it somewhere. And he did that playing rugby, and you did a little piece for, what was it, BBC Look East, and you sort of spoke about it with Will, and you had your little experience as a presenter. What was that like? How valuable was that?
Oh, I loved every second of it. I think that was probably one of the first times that I confirmed to myself that was, or this sort of thing was what I really wanted to do, because I've got anyone knew I really do. I've no care for rugby particularly, but I because it was Will and it was our friend, I had such a passion to tell his story in the right way, and I was so grateful actually that I got an opportunity to do that. And it was a really, I remember having to fill in an application form and sort of say what the story I wanted to do was and how I viewed it. And then I got to work with Tom Williams, who is a sports reporter at Look East, and again, excellent at what he does. And he really helped me out. And we went really, it was probably about an 8-month process, from storyboarding how I envisaged it to learning software, learning how to sort of conduct yourself in front of camera and stuff. And in the end, it was just broadcast on the news, and that was again such a surreal experience for me to watch a piece of work that I'd worked for so long and so hard on, to appear on that was unbelievable, really. And it was a really proud moment. And even though I sort of I'm one of these people, I don't really like sort of watching anything that I do back, but that was that's something that I did sort of have a little smile at when that broadcast, because it was surreal, and it was something I worked really hard for. And again, I go back to the point I made earlier. I'm not the best at any of these things, but if you're relentless and you work hard and you take the knocks and you get up. I mean, the blog we were talking about, I remember probably being 3-4 weeks into that and just pinging it out to people relentlessly in the same way I got you to try and read it, but you never did. But that's a separate point.
I tried.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But I would just send it out to people and go, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Where do I need to improve? And I was just so hungry to improve, I guess, and to work hard. And I think there was only one person, I won't name for obvious reasons, but it was quite a damning bit of advice I got back, I'll put it that way. And I took it really personally. And you know me as a person, I take things pretty personally a lot of the time. And I took it really personally, and I didn't write anything again for 2 weeks before eventually I kind of used it in a way to try and prove people wrong and to try and prove this person wrong in particular, and to use it to improve myself as well. And that's when I began to sort of learn the structure of articles and stuff. So in many ways, that was the worst and best thing that happened. And I've kind of taken that forward since. So you kind of have to roll with the punches a little bit, because I think if you want to do this job and you want to be in this industry, you are going to get knocked back and you are going to get told you're not very good. I get told it on a daily basis.
By me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of part and parcel of it. So you have to have thick skin. And I've kind of developed that a little bit over the 3 years I've been doing it, and I've learned some harsh lessons along the way, and some of those recently and some of those probably today or tomorrow or whatever, but you just get on with it. But yeah, in terms of that BBC experience, that was great, because it was a story that I developed from, again, a bit of paper to on the screen, and it was such an enjoyable experience, and that opened a lot of doors for me. I felt that was kind of the moment I sort of felt that things started opening themselves up and I started getting a few more opportunities. So it's amazing how one thing sort of, like a domino effect, really sort of spirals and gets everywhere, because I sort of had a year period where nothing sort of happened, and then it kind of felt like everything happened really quickly from that point to the point where I got my job. So it was extraordinary, really.
I think it really is the case. I've been a footballer, isn't it? It is a case of the thicker you can develop your skin to be, the further you will go, or the easier that journey will be. There's no cap to how far anyone can go. But I want you to tell me, or give me your message to people who are in this position at any age. I was going to say teenagers, but it can be any age. And what is your message to those who want to go out and sort of dabble, get that work experience? Because there's a lot of anxiety around it. And I think everybody, to some extent, suffers from anxiety. And that sort of thing can cripple you and stop you from getting that experience. What is your message to them people who maybe suffer from that or are thinking about it in terms of getting that experience? What do you want to say to them?
I got told something very, I think it was actually Stuart Hodge who told me this, in terms of try to say yes to everything within reason. Obviously, don't say yes to everything, but in terms of like valid opportunities, say yes to everything, even if it's something ridiculously small, because you never know who's reading, watching your piece of work, as I'm sure we'll come on to on a separate point a bit later on. But that sort of mentality, I think, is really important to have. But equally, just do it. I found a lot of people are very accommodating, very helpful, very willing to help you learn as well, as long as you show a willingness and you show an element and a degree of hard work and a passion for it. That's the main thing, because I think if you've got a passion for something and it doesn't really feel like you're doing a job or trying to get a job, and you're enjoying it along the way, and that's probably something I didn't do enough on my sort of, if you want to label it as a journey, if you want to be deep and philosophical about it, but that's probably something I didn't do enough. It was always, right, that's done, what's the next thing? And I didn't take it into perspective at the moment. So you have to do that. Just go and knock on doors relentlessly, because eventually one will open, and it could be the one that changes your position drastically. And don't be afraid to try new things. You're going to get things wrong. You're not going to be the best at everything. I'm not particularly great at photography. I had a go, as I said about that YNAF thing I did earlier. I had a go at photography, wasn't very good at it, and learned that wasn't for me. And that's the only way you do it. And the way I approached it was try as many things. Don't go in and special. Oh, certainly from my perspective, don't go in and specialize on one thing, because you need to keep as many doors open for as long as possible before you realize kind of what's for you, what you enjoy and what you're good at. And you only do that by gaining experience. So get in contact with people, make contacts, speak to people, try new things, try new experiences, try and get in as many doors as you can, email people, ask for advice, ask for feedback, and work hard. And that's all you can do. just get back up when you knock yourself over, when you get knocked over, and eventually something will open itself up and something will present itself that you won't have thought possible, and you'll be really thankful that you did all of those things.
I think that leads us just beautifully to the next part of your, we're calling it a journey. I'm sticking with the word journey, because at this point that I'm going to go into now, you're at the age of 18, we're at the age of 18, and you'd got into university on good grades. You did well in your A-levels. Well done, mate. After all that stress, you ended up doing quite well, which is, I'm sure, something you're very proud of, as well as your family and everyone involved, because it's an achievement to do brilliantly in your A-levels anyway, but to do it whilst doing everything else that you were doing, a lot of volunteer work, a lot of writing, a lot of talking about football, it's still a massive achievement. So you got into university and the YouTube channel spawns. Now, there's not many YouTube channels spawn in a fashion like this. The way it came about is, what was it? I think it was the club approached MyFootballWriter, or vice versa, whatever, in terms of Stuart Webber wanting to do an interview. And you said yes. You talked me into saying yes in terms of filming and editing, and that's all the birth of the YouTube channel. What was that like? What was the balance like? Because it's much more intense, isn't it, to go from A-levels to university, because you become self-dependent, and there's a bit less pressure in terms of there aren't teachers barking at you 24/7, but that brings a new pressure and a new challenge in itself. What was it like going from being steered in one direction in terms of school to then having that freedom and running the YouTube channel, interviewing Stuart Webber? Just what was it like?
Well, my situation is probably a bit different, because I mean, I went to UEA I did a year, studied media studies. It was kind of used as there was no journalism course, essentially no sports journalism course. So I did media, with the idea that later on I would go on and specialise in journalism. Again, this idea that I spoke about of leaving as many doors open. So I was fortunate enough that I still lived at home, so that in terms of commuting or self sort of stuff was not really a problem. And this is probably where I should say that I've been incredibly fortunate with my family and how they've supported me as well, because I think if some people turn around and said to their families, yeah, I'm not going to my uni lecture or seminar today because I'm actually going to go to Colney and interview Stuart Webber, but I'm not getting paid for it, and it doesn't, it might not bring anything, but my family are like, okay, cool, do it. And I'm incredibly privileged that that's the case, and incredibly fortunate that that's the case. But yeah, that was kind of, for me, it was a really interesting transition, because I found university, and I don't know if it was my course or whatever, I found university probably easier than A-levels in terms of workload. I felt like I could dedicate a lot more of myself to, when we sort of started really forging the YouTube channel and the direction that we wanted to take it, I kind of felt like I could focus a lot more of that, and I had a lot more time on my hands, essentially. So that was good. But I really enjoyed uni as an experience. I'm glad. I mean, I only did a year of it, so I'm not someone to lecture anyone about how difficult it is, because I'm sure it gets tougher as you go into the second and third year. But I really enjoyed the year that I had. I've met some really lovely people. I learned a lot, and it was really good as well for sort of independence and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was a lot about learning about white dead men, and their ideas, but that's kind of education, isn't it? But I really enjoyed it. And when it got to that stage again, where, yeah, I think it was a DM one day, and it was Gary saying, do you want to speak to Stuart Webber? It was a bit like, oh, and I mean, that again, that anxiety you spoke about, and that's certainly something that I've felt before, and it's probably impeded some stuff that I've done. I've probably turned down things that I've really wanted to do because of that what if voice in your head, and we all have it. And I was actually very close to saying, well, I think that's probably better surf with someone a bit more. But in the end, I kind of thought, what the hell, I'm going to regret it if I don't do it. And yeah, I decided to do it, and managed to get you into film. It was initially not going to be filmed, and then I think it was actually the club's idea that they were kind of like, you can film it if you want. And I was kind of like, okay. And obviously I knew yourself, and yeah, from there, I think they say the rest is history. But uni I really enjoyed. I think it helped that the football season was good in terms of when we started. That Stuart Webber interview was mind-blowing in terms of the time he gave us, but also the depth of answers he gave us. I mean, we were essentially two teenagers rocking up to his office at Colney to speak to him, and yeah, the time that he gave us was incredible, but also the value of his answers as well, I think were excellent. And again, there's probably a level of depth that that we both owe to him, I think, for the creation of this channel, for one, but again, that interview, because that was picked up by national outlets in the end. So it was an extraordinary moment, I think, for both of us, really, to watch how far that travelled. I remember sort of pushing it out and then watching Norwich beat Leeds at Ellen Road on your TV in your front room, and sort of 2 days later it being on 7,000 views, and we're sort of looking at each other like, how the hell does this happen? You know, we were creating music videos 2 years ago in media studies and A levels. Like, it was a really surreal moment for both of us. But not to get too soppy, but I'm glad I got to share that with you, and it was really good.
We're both gonna start crying in a minute, just like little babies. But do you know what? It genuinely blows my mind that you said you were battling with this sort of anxiety in terms of not wanting to do it, because you had to talk me into it. All I was doing was filming. Like, it's such an easy job. And Jordan, who's filming this, who sort of produces the videos now, it knows it's such a simple job. But you had to really talk me into it, and the fact that you were also battling the idea of not wanting to do it as well is mesmerising. But tell me a little bit more about that Webber interview. What was the preparation like? Because for all the mentality and sort of the drilling this idea of succeeding into your head, what did that look like on paper? What was the preparation like? And have you sort of replicated that throughout your time since then?
Yeah, so in terms of preparation, I didn't want to go in. It was essentially, I did a few interviews before, but only sort of like Vox Pops, 5 minute sort of things. Nothing like a proper sit down, like in-depth sort of chat. And so I was really, really conscious that I didn't want to go in there with 10 written questions, like pre-prepared questions, because I knew if I did that, it would be very different. It would be a bit like ask a question, listen to it. It wouldn't be very conversational. It wouldn't flow in the way that I kind of wanted it to. I wanted it to be quite natural, and I kind of think that helps if you do an interview and it's quite, particularly an interview like that, and it's quite conversational. Then I kind of think that helps you get a little bit more out of people. I think Stuart's quite open anyway, so I think that probably helped more than anything else. But so my preparation was more, I ring-fenced sort of 5 or 6 topics that I wanted to speak about, and then maybe within that I would set two questions in my head that if it reached a point where I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going on to next, that I could fall back on, but I didn't want to be bound by those questions, and so that was my approach to it. I went in there quite loose, really, in terms of sort of research. I mean, obviously I did research and I looked stuff up, and I looked at Stuart's history and again sort of his achievements and whatnot, and I was very conscious of those. But I remember very consciously wanting to get the style right and wanting it to look a certain way and feel a certain way and to come across a certain way, and I think it did. So that was the prep I did for it, really. It wasn't a lot of sort of in-depth scripting or sort of pre-prepared questions. It was more general topics, so recruitment at the academy, how he reflected on his year or 2 years at the club at that point, and it was just things like that, rather than I don't know, tell us a bit about Marco Stiepermann. You know, I didn't want to go in with those pre-prepared questions. It was more the topics and being a bit fluid in my approach in that regard. So that's the way I approached it, and that's not necessarily the right or wrong way to do it, but that's just the way that I felt and still do to an extent feel comfortable with, and that's just how I interview people as a rule.
I think it's also convenient that we both were Norwich fans. So anything he said was just fascinating. And it's genuinely, I think it might have even got to a point for you where it's like the questions come from instinct because you're genuinely curious. Whereas sometimes, say you interview someone who you don't know anything about, you don't know their story, and it's I'm asking these questions to get to know you. Whereas for Stuart Webber, it's like, I want to know this because you love Norwich City. And I think, I know it's different for you because you're impartial now and you're a journalist, but the beauty of still being like, not still being a fan, but not having the responsibility and the weight of being professional, I'll always put Stuart Webber on a bit of a pedestal because we're so grateful for that, aren't we? And I think I see the abuse he gets sometimes, and maybe rightly so for his transfers, etc. But I still look at Stuart Webber as the guy who gave us the chance to go and meet him, gain this invaluable experience, and it's just utterly bizarre. And from there, we then had a bit of a journey, didn't we, in terms of the YouTube channel. At the time, it was called MyFootballWriter, the YouTube channel. We interviewed you interviewed some legends. We spoke to Ewan Roberts, Matt Jarvis. I don't know why I've tossed Matt Jarvis into the legend sphere there. There's Gary Gowers as well, wasn't there? What was that experience like for you? And were they difficult? Because Stuart Webber's contemporary, and we've seen him, in full flow at Norwich. We've seen him join Norwich, etc. Say Jerry Goss as an example. Was that a difficult interview for you? Because he was well before our time, wasn't he? Incredibly fascinating, wonderful human being as well. Really, really lovely, fantastic storyteller. But was that difficult for you, that interview specifically, and maybe some of the other players we spoke to?
Yeah, I think the Gossy one's probably the hardest one I've done, to be honest. It was, again, it kind of happened in a short period of time as well. We only kind of knew it was in the works for a while, but from sort of it getting the green light to it happening was only like 2 days. So I didn't have a lot of time to research him. And again, when you do these ones, you want to give them justice. You want to tell their story in the right way, and you want to let them tell their story in the right way. And I'm kind of, the way I interview people is kind of, I want to make them the story and let them speak about their journeys. I don't want it to be I just want to sort of help guide them, I guess, to some extent, and I wanted to get it right. I think there were probably elements of that one that I look back on and regret slightly, that I didn't probe more, or I didn't know a bit more about a certain area. But I think it was a good learning lesson. I mean, Jeremy Goss, a Norwich City legend, he's a name synonymous with a football club, and such a good guy. He gave us a lot of his time, and I really enjoyed speaking to him. And it's good to learn about people, and good to sort of put yourself out of your comfort zone and speak to people who perhaps are before your time. But yeah, that was certainly a lot different to the Stuart Webber one in terms of the research I had to do. And again, that was on top of uni work at the time, and uni's a lot of reading. So yeah, that was difficult, but still thoroughly enjoyable. And again, these sort of things reaffirmed to me that this is what I wanted to do. And I think whenever you meet sort of former players and stuff, particularly at that early stage, there's a lot of nerves. And I probably didn't feel that really for Stuart Webber, because, as you say, it was contemporary. I was quite curious anyway. And perhaps I didn't realise how big it was. But yeah, certainly when we went through those stages roughly about a year ago or so now, we were just knocking out those interviews with players. It was kind of right next one. I didn't really I wasn't really there, if that makes sense. I was looking ahead all the time. But I really enjoyed them all for different reasons. And we did a really sort of broad range of people as well. Leon Barnett, Matt Jarvis, players who perhaps didn't play so many games. Ewan Roberts and Jeremy Goss, who bona fide Norwich City legends, So it was really good to sort of learn my craft, I guess, in that way, and speak to a range of people from a range of eras as well. And I think it probably made me a lot more switched on as to the general history of the club, rather than perhaps the history that I'm just conscious of because I live through.
Don't forget Cedric as well. Cedric was there as well. And
Top
to be honest,
Cedric.
He really, really is. Love meeting him at the time. And you know what? We could sit here and sort of reminisce, couldn't we, about the YouTube channel? But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you, I'm going to remind you some of the stuff we did, and I want you to pick out your favourite thing. We'll say two things: your favourite moment, and also the experience that you value the most besides Webber, because that's sort of hard to compete with, isn't it? We were very fortunate, weren't we? That the football club were brilliant for us. They let us do a lot of things that I don't think we dreamt of doing. And I don't think many sort of professional football clubs would allow two teenagers to rock up to Colney, say, and just sort of have free reign to do whatever you want, essentially. And we're so grateful for that. It was really good of them. But we were lucky enough to go to dinner. I think it was like a fan media thing, wasn't it? With Delia, Michael, I think Ben Kensel was there, Stuart and Zoe. And I think there were a couple of other fan media there as well, as Along Come Norwich, TNC boys. Have I missed anyone? Okay. I don't think I've missed anyone. We went to the promotion parade as well. We were up on that stand, which was just absolutely mental, wasn't it? Because to be there alone was fantastic, but the fact we were on the massive stand, and also the fact that we were on them, what was it? Where were we? The Castle Meadow, whatever it's called, above the fans. It was just unbelievable, wasn't it? We got to speak to Norwich City legends. We got to meet these players who were idols at the club. We got to sort of enrich ourselves within the culture of the club. We went to Colney a few times. What else did we do? We went to that press conference marathon following the season, where there was me up there with my little camera, and then there was Sky Sports with two massive cameras, and it was like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe they've let us do that. Am I missing anything in terms of what we did? We did live streams as well, bit of engagement.
We were incredible. We did a lot, and again, this is something that we probably sit back and appreciate a lot more now. But it was really relentless, because I think we were both sort of constantly thinking about the next thing and how do we top it. But yeah, I think that promotion parade in particular was very, very special. I mean, you asked sort of at the top of your point there about one that was just surreal, sort of pinch yourself moment. It was that, and seeing the sea of yellow and green in front of me, and yeah, it was kind of like, what right have we got to be up here, you know? But it was such a special day, and it was such a special period. I think everyone sort of got swept away with it, but yeah, to feel like you were particularly close to it, and we got to speak about it every week on those streams that we did, and the way we sort of shaped the channel, and also the way that the people received it as well was really good. So I look back on that period last year really, really fondly.
It's brilliant. Is your favourite is the promotion parade, and I think I have to agree, because as we said, it was just mental, wasn't it? It was so enjoyable. And I'll say it again, we were lucky enough to be there, but the fact we rocked up in, I think we nicked the best position on the sort of stand as well, right slap bang in the middle. It was just absolutely phenomenal. Now, the beginning of the season saw Norwich City face an impossible task, as we now know, sitting here as a Championship club again. I can't remember the situation with them, what happened with Archant, etc. But as soon as that job became available, what was your thinking? Was it immediately go for it? Was there a hesitation? What was the sort of process of going for the actual job?
My first thought was, well, I won't get that. That was my first thought. I was kind of thought, well, that's the dream, you know, that's what I'm aiming towards. But I won't get that. I'm not quite where you need to be to get that. And I actually wasn't going to apply for it on those grounds, on the fact that I just thought I was underqualified, not particularly good enough, not where I needed to be in terms of stature and qualification to be able to apply for that job. And in the end, I kind of thought, if I don't do it, I'll regret it. And it was kind of a what have I got to lose element. And again, probably owe a thanks to my family, really, because they kind of said, like, you can apply for that because that's what you want to do. It's there, it's in front of you. And I kind of thought, well, even if I don't get it, and the likelihood was that I wouldn't, at least that I did it and I can't regret it. That was kind of what I thought. So that was my thought process. I remember actually sending the application off during a Norwich City pre-season friendly. I think they were playing Toulouse, and we talk about the club who were brilliant for us. They allowed me in the press box for that game to cover it, so that was a really good experience as well. And so yeah, I think I sent my application off during the game, and was kind of like, well, there you go. Whether I'll hear anything or not, who knows? But at least I'd done it, and yeah, it sort of spiraled from there, really. And it was quite a long wait. It was certainly. I remember, yeah, the interview was, so I interviewed when Norwich played Toulouse in a friendly, so I don't know when that works out to be. I don't know, off the top of my head, no idea. And I think the interview was the day before West Ham away, or the Thursday when Norwich were going to play the day away. So it was quite a long process in terms of waiting, but yeah, it was a really sort of surreal experience to get the phone call and say to even say that I've got an interview was like, wow. I didn't expect that, and it was. I remember ringing you actually and saying, no, did I ring you or was I meeting? I think it might have been the time we had our first steering meeting as well. I'm trying to think it, but
I think it was the meeting.
Yeah, it was along the line. So that was really like, wow, that was quite big. I didn't think I'd get to that part of the process, let alone to the part of the process I got. So from there, it was just kind of like, right, I want to make sure that I give it my best shot. If you've got a chance of getting something, then you might as well try your hardest to get it and go all out. And that's certainly how I viewed it at that point. But it was just surprise, really, from start to finish of that whole process.
What was the actual interview like then? Were you absolutely bricking it?
Yeah, I was. I couldn't tell you much about it, to be honest. I know that there was. I had to prepare like a content plan around a match weekend, which essentially means the bits of content that you're going to produce around a match weekend. And I kind of viewed it, and it was like I think it was a match day, and I sort of thought to myself, I'll broaden it out and do a match weekend. So that's what I did, and I went in there with that and sort of rambled through that for 15 minutes. I wore a tie, and that was nice. I quite like wearing ties, so that was good. But I think the panel was Paddy, Lakers, and two others who I forget, and I apologise. Again, it was all a bit of a blur. and I'm not particularly good with names anyway.
I hope you don't work with them now and they see this and think, oh, they've forgotten me.
Emily Hewitt was one, who's our digital person, and someone in HR who I have, whose name I do forget, and I apologise. But that was, again, it was kind of like a presentation part of the interview, and then it was just like questions and stuff like that. And I came away and I kind of thought, yeah, that was okay. I kind of felt, well, I've done all I can do now. So if I don't get it, again, it's that element of sort of not regretting anything. I kind of didn't feel like I'd left anything in the room, if you want to use a football expression. And I was quite content, but again, never really sort of thought that I'd get the interview, get the job rather. So for me, I was just keen to learn from that experience and keen to use that interview process to sort of showcase what I could do and equally learn what I could do better in the future. So yeah, that was the interview really. I can't really tell you too much, but Paddy's probably a better person to ask about how it went. But obviously, it went okay. But yeah, then it was just kind of sitting and waiting.
Right. So you get the job. You get was it a call, text, email?
Yeah, it was a phone call. And I remember it started off because I'd left. I had to take some documents to my interview, obviously, as is sort of protocol these days. And so I'd actually left them in the interview. That was probably one mistake I made. So I guess they always kind of had to call me back. But yes, the phone call started and it was kind of like, oh, you've got these documents that you've left, and I was like, okay, so this is going to be about picking them up, and then it sort of progressed, and it was kind of like, yeah, we'd like to offer you the job. And from that, and I think I apologise to this person because I think I probably laughed as a response, but it was just all very surreal. And I think when you work so hard for something or to get to a certain point and you get there, it's kind of like, well, wow, it's hard to describe, but that was a very surreal moment. It must have been not far off a year now, I guess. So and then it was just kind of just going through sort of start dates and stuff and whether I accepted it, and it was just, oh yeah. It was, that was kind of the nature of it. But I was very, very pleased because it was my dream job essentially, and I didn't expect it to happen at this point in my life and at this point of where I was, I guess. And I was just very excited, very, very excited.
What was the first day like then? Because you've got your pictures. We'll put it up on the screen right now. You've got your pictures with the scarf, and it's like you just signed for Norwich City, and it was just honestly so bizarre to see. I was so proud, honestly, and everyone else was who knows you. What was the first day actually like?
Just surreal again is the word I'd use. I remember rocking up, sort of having to sit in there and wait for Mark Armstrong, who's our deputy sports editor, who's in that day. And yeah, that was it really, just sort of getting set up and learning the ropes. First thing I had to do was sort of write about myself and sort of how excited I was to take the job and stuff. And that's why those pictures were necessary. And yeah, it was the first day really. It was just kind of getting used to the systems and everything and sort of all the boring admin stuff. But it was just kind of like, how the hell did I get myself here? How have I managed this? How have I sort of winged this? That was kind of it. But it feels like I've been there for years now, to be honest. And I absolutely love it, and I've loved every minute of it, even though it's not been a particularly great season, and we've obviously had all the stuff in the world. I've really loved every second. I realise how privileged it is. There's only 4 of these jobs probably in the county, and I have one of them. So it's something that I'm fully aware of and so appreciative of. And it's somewhere so reputable and somewhere that was so established and that I read a lot of and that I really respect. And I respect the people who work there and sort of looked up to them in some regard, and to sort of be working with them and learning from them has been a really good experience.
You must have known you were in for a hell of a ride, considering your first game was Manchester City, wasn't it? And I remember you telling me after the game that you missed the first goal because your head was in your laptop, obviously getting used to the new scenario that you found yourself in. What was that game like? Because you'd literally gone from being a fan who could go mental at games to someone who's got to be professional in a box full of professionals. Was that tough? It was tough. It was tough, and that game was difficult. But at the same time, I kind of had the expectation that they were going to get beat 5-0.
So for that not to happen was really exciting. And again, for the overall day and personally, it makes that day stand out so much more, the fact that it was that game and it was so special in that regard. And I'm so glad that they won it in the way that they won it. And Carrow Road was what it was, because it made reporting it, and it made it such a special day for me personally for the first one. I mean, what a way. I couldn't have wrote it any better than that. It was sensational, and it was brilliant. As I said, it was the first time that I'd sort of been in the press box with Dave and Pad, and sort of doing the job that I do and trying to get my head around the way that I was going to approach certain things. And then Norwich prop up with a result like that, and it kind of all took care of itself from there. You know, I didn't have to be the best writer in the world to paint a picture of what had happened. You know, Norwich had already done that. So it was such a special day. But yeah, it was surreal. And I may or may not be able to confirm that there were, even though I wasn't allowed to leap up, there may have been a few sort of fist pumps under the desk, but that's all I allowed myself.
That's a bit of a challenge for those desks, especially because they're like proper like nitty gritty, aren't they? I will skip forward to now. What is the biggest challenge you faced? Was it adjusting to the actual job? Was that easy? Was that tough?
The big audience was tough, yeah. And I had this a bit when I started at MFW as well. And in hindsight, again, it's something that I've kind of grown out of myself now, which is just don't read the comments, just don't read them. Again, it kind of falls under what you don't know doesn't hurt you, essentially. But yeah, I think I probably read too much, and I was so keen to make an impression and stuff that you just kind of want to read everything and see what people think and stuff, and that's not necessarily always the best thing to do. I think that's probably the biggest thing, to sort of to quote Stuart Webber, ignore the noise a little bit and kind of realize that as long as the people that you work with are happy and that you're pleased with the stuff you're putting out, that's the most important thing. You know, people can, if they don't like it, they don't like it. As long as you're proud of it and it's you, that's the main thing. So that's part of it. Yeah, so I think sort of responding to that was a big challenge, and sort of responding to the feedback and stuff. And some of it's not always nice, and some of it sometimes is a bit personal, and that's fine. People are entitled to their opinions. I put an opinion out there in football. I put myself out there, so I expect that back. But it doesn't make it sort of any less. But again, it's part of that thick skin element that I was talking about earlier that you need to develop, and that's helped. I kind of thought that I was there, and this job made me realize I wasn't there enough when I first took it. But I'm at a level now where it's just kind of like water off a duck's back, rather. And you know, again, it's probably hard. The stuff with Daniel Farker, for example, was a prime exception. I put my opinion out there. He disagreed with it, and again, I was kind of it's fine, you know. But I think if I'd have started my job, that would have been a more difficult process to go down. So I think it probably showed to me that I'm actually improving in that element of it. So that's my key advice. And equally, that people probably, and I didn't before I started the job, they don't understand the job particularly. And that's no one's fault because they don't do it every day. But in terms of like the stories we do and stuff, that people don't necessarily understand that. So that's part of it as well. I think there's lots of lessons I've learned. I also feel like and hopefully people have seen that I've improved since I've been here as well. And that's kind of what I want to keep doing. So they're my lessons, I think, if you were to push me, those three. But it's been a whirlwind, really.
What would you say the biggest lesson that you learned? Briefly, what would you say it has been the biggest lesson that you've learned from learning from?
I'd say that's probably it, to be fair, in terms of the comments and stuff. I think there's always people on the internet, isn't there, who are just trying to put people down, and that's kind of what they do. And I've had examples that both with that email that I spoke about earlier that I got from a certain person to I remember some comments on an MFW article that I wrote before very early days that was probably that some people took issue with. And then also sort of, throughout my time here, really, I think that there've been several things as well. And you just get to a stage where you have to tell yourself not to read that stuff. And as long as you're content with it, and as long as the people that matter are content with it, and I think you have to learn the difference between advice that's useful and advice that's not, right? So someone calling you again clueless or whatever, that's not particularly constructive, it's not helpful to you. But if someone makes a genuine counter argument to your claim, then that's useful. That's part of my job, to engage with those people, to speak to them, and to engage with them. That's part and parcel of it. So again, it's probably I probably didn't learn that constructive advice and just abuse were different things. I think that's something I've learned from, and just how massive a platform this is that I've got. It's huge, really. And those are the main things that I've learned from. I feel like I'm a lot better 6 months down the line, just in terms of this job generally, than I was when I walked in. And if in 6 months' time I'm better than I am at the moment, then again, that's all I can aim to do. So I think you learn lessons constantly in this job, in different elements of it, and you just kind of have to go with it. And each day's different, and that's a great thing. And it's going to throw up challenges, and it's about how you respond to those a lot of the time. And some I've responded to, and I've been really pleased with how I've responded to, and some I've responded to and think I probably could have done a little bit better. So that's life, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah, exactly. That is life. I think it's always, for any listeners listening, for any watchers watching, remember, you're not going to please everyone. That is such an impossible task in any walk of life, especially football. Yeah,
I think also looking for the sort of self-validation, I guess, and also that other people sort of, what you said there is absolutely spot on. Not everyone's going to like you, and that's fine. That's okay. I think from my perspective, when I started, I wanted absolutely everyone to love what I wrote all of the time, to agree all the time. We all want that, don't we? Everyone's got that little bit of ego that wants that, and it's not going to happen. And you get battered and you get bruised along the way. And I've kind of, again, taught myself that the silent consumer and the silent reader and the silent watcher, they're the most important people. It's not the people that come out and give you abuse, because they've already decided they don't like you. So you're not going to sway them, as far as I'm concerned. But as long as you've got people who, if I think generally, and this is probably sort of going off on a tangent, but I think generally if people see something they like on social media, or I don't know, watch a bit of TV or watch a YouTube video that they like, or read an article that they like, it's very rare that they will think, oh, I really enjoy it. You know what, I'm going to take time out of my day to say I really enjoyed that. It's just very rare. It doesn't happen. It's just human nature. And again, I don't do it enough to other people. But if you read something or you watch something and you strongly disagree with it, or you just disagree with everything that's been said or that you've watched, or you just don't like it, you're more likely to take to your keyboard and express your opinion. That's just human nature. So that's what I would say to people as well, is that the silent consumer is the most important. And just because there's a loud minority, it doesn't mean that the majority aren't appreciative and don't enjoy it. So that's I think the advice that I would take, and that people can disagree with you. That's really healthy as well. I always say it's important that people disagree with me. I'm not the oracle of all knowledge. Maybe I like to believe I am at times, but I'm certainly not, and nobody else is. So it's really important that people disagree with you and that people engage as well. And that engagement is so key, I think, to what I did. I can write the best article in the world. If it goes into the abyss, what's the point? You want people to read it, and you want people to engage with it and express their views. So that's the most important thing. So there's nothing more pleasing than when I see someone go, I read this and it made some valid points, but here is what I think. That's brilliant. That's what I love. It's speaking to people like that and getting people's opinions, because that can help sort of broaden your opinion as well. And that's only a positive thing.
You've definitely answered the question already, but the last question I will ask you nonetheless is, it's the cheesy one. It's the classic. What advice would you give to someone in any walk of life? Because the goal is the same thing. The journey will be a bit different, but the goal is always the same. What advice would you give to young, old, middle-aged, whatever people who are sort of aspiring to get to where you are in terms of sports journalism?
So I remember, not to big up my football career or lack of too much, but I remember going in.
You're going to mention Cambridge?
No, not Cambridge this time. I had a brief spell with Wroxham, and going into their dressing room, and they had a quote on the wall, and it said, "Hard work beats talent when talent refuses to work hard." And that's always stuck with me a little bit. And it's just, it is as cliche as, just work as hard as you humanly can, because you won't, if you give 100%, you won't regret that. If you give 80%, there's always going to be that bit of you that says, what if I gave more? If you give more and you fail, fair enough, hold your hands up, whatever. But just don't have any regrets about it. To keep knocking on doors, don't be nervous and scared, believe in your own ability. Believe me, from experience, I know how tough that is. Make sure you have a good support network. I think all of these are valuable things. Just keep knocking on doors, keep trying, keep going, and eventually you'll get a break and you'll get an opportunity. And that might take 10 years, it might take 2 months, but when you get there, the feeling that you get from doing something that you love every day is irreplaceable, really, and it's so important. So that would be my advice to people. Just keep going, keep trying to improve. That's important as well. For people who are writers, read people who are better than you. For people who produce videos, watch people who produce better videos from you. Learn, reflect, analyze everything. What did you like about certain things? What didn't you like? Incorporate the good bits. Make sure you don't use the bad bits, etc. And that's part of the growth. So just work hard. That's my advice, and improve. And yeah, you'll get there.
Mr. Southwell, it has been an absolute pleasure. I hope we've done your story justice. I don't think I've missed anything out, have I?
Not from memory, no. But my memory's not the best anyway. So.
I said neither's mine, so it's a recipe for disaster. But it has been a genuine pleasure, not only to film this video, but to sort of see you just become what you've become now. It is honestly, it still blows my mind. I'm very much going to look forward to watching you flourish in your role next season and the season after, and however long you're there. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we'll see you again at some point. I'm sure I'll see you again at some point before tomorrow, the season starts after. Tomorrow, probably, yeah. But I'll see you at some point. You'll be back on the channel at some point. And for anyone listening or watching, please use this as a tool to sort of just encourage yourself to do what you want to do. It doesn't even have to be sports journalism. It's just any situation you find yourself in life. And I won't get too philosophical, as much as, you know, we have that urge to being a top A-level student for philosophy and ethics. But
honestly, it's the only time I use that. I use that qualification, to be honest.
It's so easy to, isn't it? But it has been a genuine pleasure, as I said now, for 3 or 4 times. If everyone listening could, or watching, I keep saying listening, could like the video. I think it's a green heart on Spotify. And if you could rate us on iTunes as well, we would be incredibly grateful. Also, if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel down below in the description box, you will find all of Connor's links. Not that you need them, because I'm sure you already know who Connor is if you found your way here. But until next time, we'll see you again very, very soon.